more
All
people
right,
to pour in here.
sweet. All right, yeah, I'm just we're starting to record now, so good to go whenever you are. Welcome everybody. Kurt's going to just start the session off reviewing a very interesting hand. This is from Sunday, I assume.
This is from
From
yesterday.
yesterday? Okay. So you had a really interesting
Yeah.
hand from yesterday that we're going to review here in Odin, and then we're going to jump into the 10K after that.
Yeah, so we got that logged up here as well. I think we left off at the 33-minute mark. So just gonna make this like real brief here. Not gonna get too into it. Again, I might dive into a little more detail later on. I might actually rerun this in Pio, but definitely some interesting things going on. So anyway, I ended up opening the. So this was with 18 people left. I think there was like 28K to first place. I opened the hijack with King Jack off, which I think is fine. I think like jamming is fine too, but I think just opening probably has a little more benefits than just jamming.
So you're
But
on like
anyway,
15 bigs here to
yeah,
start.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'd rather jam this from like the cutoff of the button, little later
Oh, you're in
position,
the
and
hijack. I thought you were in the cutoff. Okay.
right, right,
Okay.
right, right.
All right.
So
Makes
from
sense.
earlier positions, I'm just going to be opening, and from later ones, we can jam a little bit wider. So anyway, I figure we were going to be pretty high frequency bet on this board, which you can see we do have here. What was a bit surprising to me is that the majority of C bets here are like half pot plus sizes here. So I was assuming that we were going to be using a lot of small sizes at a high frequency, and usually when you
Hmm.
see like 100% C bet, you do see more smaller C bets being used because then you can bet a wider range. But the fact that we're seeing two pretty large sizes being the predominantly used ones, I was definitely surprised to see here. And the only reason I can think that is because our opening range from off 15 bigs from the hijack is so strong, and big blind is also going to be lacking like a lot of strong ace X's because they're just going to be jamming them pre. That we probably really just get to push our equity a lot by putting in some big bets and making it really hard for them to continue with like, let's say like Jack five of clubs or let's say even 8-4 of hearts, like little gut shots, something like that, that they probably won't be able to continue versus a big bet, but they could definitely call versus a small bet. So I was right about the high frequency C bet, but wrong about the C bet size. So this is a very interesting
Yeah.
spot that I haven't seen very
Do you
much.
have any diamonds in
Uh,
your hand, or was it King Jack no diamond?
I did. I think I had King of Clubs, Jack of Diamonds
Jack
here.
of diamonds. Okay.
So yeah, so it's not too relevant on the flop because obviously we're betting our whole range. So but in game, I decided to bet quarter pot, and I got the check call. Um,
It's kind of
I
interesting when you have
kind
the
of
diamond, you're blocking out at least a couple of his flush draws too. That kind of makes it. I don't know if that increases maybe why they want you to bet a little bit bigger because you're taking out the flush draws anyway, and then you're going to get the weaker part of his range maybe to check. Or sorry, the weaker part of his range to just fold a lot of the time if you bet bigger. Like I'm trying to kind of like
um,
theorize it in my head right now.
well, yeah, but not only that, but we could also potentially. Okay, so I'll just go back to this. So if we bet like 65% here, I'm gonna guess he's gonna be folding some 5x and 6x here. Yeah, you can see like 6x and 5x are definitely indifferent, and a lot of this is going to depend on whether or not they have like some diamonds or backdoor straight draws to go with it. So,
Right.
like for example, you can see with the queen six here that it's pure calling with the six of diamonds or the queen of diamonds, but it's essentially pure folding without. So, if we're able to bet a hand like king jack and just get them to be folding pairs in spots like this, with hands that they're easily going to be able to call versus a small bet, I think that's like pretty highly beneficial
Right.
and can
Right.
definitely see some reasoning for using the big bet size. Um, uh, the thing about betting big though is we also narrow the caller's range as well. So when they do call, they're going to have a stronger range than if we just bet a quarter pot, which means our double barrel success is probably going to be a little lower than it normally would be because we're by betting bigger, we're forcing big blind to only continue with the stronger parts of their range. So yeah, so I definitely see some benefits to betting small, betting big. The fact that it just purely wants to be betting on the bigger side is pretty interesting. And now you can see when we bet quarter pot, all these 6Xs and 5Xs are pretty much pure calls now for the smaller size, which I think is absolutely fine. But then again, like when we do bet this small and they're gonna have like a hand like Jack 5, and then let's say the turn just comes like a random queen, we're gonna have a higher double barrel success if we are bluffing, because they're not gonna be able to continue with these parts of their range. But just getting them to have an immediate fold as well is probably like a decent outcome. So either way, we ended up betting small and we got called. Turn was really interesting here too. It was the 7 of diamonds. Now before we actually load it, I can't remember what the results were, but I would say the 7 of diamonds in general is going to be a much better card for the big blind than it is for our range. That said, we did have a diamond in our range, and the majority of our turn semi bluffs are going to be flush draw oriented, I would say, as well as some like 8x and 9x. So I do expect some bleed on the turn here, and you can see they're actually bleeding like over half the time here, which is a large amount of like a pretty big lead frequency, I would say. And that just goes to show how much better this 7 of diamonds is for the big blind callers range as opposed to our opening range. Like we're probably not opening like 3-4 suited. We're not opening like 6-5 suited off this stack. Probably not even 8-9 suited, 7-6 suited, stuff like that. So a lot of these hands that would be very good on this board, we actually don't have, and the big blind's going to have all of these. That's why you see such a high lead frequency here on the turn. That being said, our opponent did check in game. So I'm going to go to the King Jack. And you can see, because it doesn't bet at all for the small size, that there's really no hands in the range, but we're still going to be able to find at least what it wants to do with the King Jack. Hopefully, well, I might have to switch screens here because it's kind of hard to see. Yeah, I'm going to switch screens here real quick just so you guys can see a little bit more. Now? Or can you see my screen at least?
Yeah, we can see it. I mean, it's a little more blurry now, but yeah, I can see it.
Okay, so anyway, we can see like King of Club, or let's say King of Spades, Jack of Diamonds. It's still checking 80% of the time, which I thought was a little high. I figured that King of Diamonds might bet a little bit higher frequency since it's drawing to the nuts. But they're essentially checking the same frequency. They're checking about 80% of the time with the diamond combos. So even with the better draws that we have, they're still checking pretty high frequency. I'm going to guess a hand like King 10, King 9 are probably going to be betting a little bit more. Yeah, you see like King 10. Yeah, they're still checking about the same frequency.
It's hard
so
to see the percentages,
way,
just they're kind of blurry. I don't think we can see them.
Yeah, well, I guess this is just more so I can see it and explain it to you guys too, because I couldn't see them on the
That is
smaller
interesting
screen.
though. That like I guess with the higher King X's with the diamonds, it's supposed to be a check back. With like you said, with the King Jack with the King of Diamonds, it's telling you to check back here. It's the best play 80% of the time.
Right. So it essentially just wants to continue with like good pairs and flushes. Now, what I told myself is that I'm going to have some checks with flushes here, and that's because of the stack to pot ratio is so low. I can still easily get the money in here if we happen to check back, and that way when we check back turn, we also have some strong hands in our range that are basically going to be able to call like any river. So essentially, like if I had a hand like King Queen of Diamonds, I think I would be checking here pretty high frequency. But what I did look at, I think most of the diamond combos that that I was looking at here, I think they were almost like 100% bet on the turn, which I was like very surprised to see. So
say it again. Which diamond combos? Just like in general, if you have a flush.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I actually haven't searched this part of it very much. So it's going to be interesting to see what this comes up with here. It's kind of lagging a little bit here. Okay, so we'll look at the diamonds over here. I don't know if I can highlight these here. Yeah, so you can see that the diamond combos here are pure betting, which was like very surprising to me. At such a small stack to pot ratio, I would expect there to be some traps here for sure, and that's because we don't have to like bet free streets in order to get all the money in here. So when I see a pure bet from the diamonds, I was definitely very surprised here, because in game I was definitely going to be checking some diamond combos this short. So I think in that regard, the output for this hand is going to be a little bit different than what it may be if I was actually checking back some diamonds here on the turn. So as played anyway, we ended up checking here, and that's again mainly because I did recognize that this card is so bad for us here. And river was the nine of clubs, I
So real
think.
quick, if you had, let's say, 'cause I'm trying to think of some examples you'd be opening here, um, like, I don't know, I guess King Nine's too loose of an open. I'm trying to think of some examples that you could be opening here that you would be continuing with a diamond on the turn here. Like what combos can
Um,
you think of? I guess. Can you think of any, or are you just pure checking back here?
um, hmm. Like I'm definitely gonna be checking high frequency. I'm not gonna be pure checking back. I might be checking back more so with like hands that have some equity but don't necessarily have a pair. Like essentially like the hand that I have. So essentially when we're betting here on the turn, we're basically betting hands that are strong enough to bet call it off, like some ace X hands, maybe some uh if we're opening a hand like 7-8 suited ever, like we can kind of like merge bluff that. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a diamond combo. So it's kind of difficult because our range is so narrow here, and that's what made the spot so weird. And that's why I didn't want to dive too deep into it.
Hmm.
At least not for now, because there's just so many factors that were going on during this hand that
That
I could really like. There's a lot for me to kind of get into
Yeah,
here.
that's the move. Road.
So
His standard line is to bet one quarter pot with flushes in this spot, and then I think he wrote two
yeah,
barrels there. I think he means just like three barreling off then after that.
or with what hand?
I think. Well, he said my standard line is to bet. Well, he just wrote with flushes. My standard line is to bet one quarter pot with flushes and two barrels there. I don't know what he meant by the end part of it, but maybe he just means he's two
Oh,
barreling
sorry,
with
I
the
don't have
flush.
that.
Oh, it's
Let me
poker
check the chat.
seminars.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had it on the other side. Yeah, my center line's about a quarter with pot with flushes and double barrel there. So yeah, I don't know what you're double barreling with. Like if you're double barreling with flushes in general or just like a lot of your range. Like so, I guess elaborate there. But anyway, so we got to this river here, and essentially like what I was telling myself is that for one, I do have flushes in my range because I said I was going to be checking back flushes. Although Odin doesn't agree with that, I definitely had them in my range, and there's also no way that my opponent like knows whether or not that if I'm like slow playing flushes here. In general, like most people don't slow play in these spots as much as they should be, and so maybe they just thought that it's like impossible for me to have a flush because I would just always bet the turn, which in my case isn't true because I would definitely check some flushes. So it's always kind of hard to go like because you never know what other people are thinking, not only about like what they're thinking of their own game, but what they perceive you to be doing as well. So like for example, if, it's like a major disaster if I'm trying to rep a flush here on the river, but my opponent, which I can definitely have, but my opponent thinks I never have flushes because I would always bet the turn. So that would kind of be a disaster for me if my opponent thought that way because then essentially like I never have a flush here. Like I'm only having like an eight or like pocket nines or ace nine for value here. So anyway, it does say that we are still mostly giving up here, like with King of Spades, Jack of Diamonds. It says we're checking back here 87% of the time, which I thought was kind of high with a diamond. Also, like King Jack with a diamond is also checking back quite a bit as well, and maybe that's just because this board is just so bad for us. So we're still checking back here like 65% of the time, and again with the bet size that I use here, it's kind of difficult to pinpoint. This is kind of another reason I wanted to use Pile just so we could get just for how we played the spot, just to see what the output would be here. So yeah, it's kind of difficult to completely break down in Odin, but as I said, it makes more sense for them to be giving up here. More so if they're never slow playing flushes on the turn, because then that way they never have flushes on the river. So it's kind of hard to rep like a strong hand in this spot. So I kind of understand why they're giving up here. But again, as I said, like I definitely would have had flushes in my range here at the stack to pot ratio. So I decided to bluff here anyway. I also think that I could have a hand like pocket eights that I'm betting full weight. I could have a hand like king eight suited that I'm betting full weight. I could have like even a hand like let's say ace nine with a nine of diamonds would be a decent hand to slow play because it's so far ahead and it can also basically call off most rivers and also like bet like if I had ace nine with a nine of diamonds here, I would definitely be jamming here for value once our opponent checks. I think it's very rare that our opponents are going to be slow playing diamonds or eights in the spot. Although I think they should be. I think it's very rare that that does happen. So we're allowed to value bet a little bit more thinly. But yeah, a hand like ace nine is definitely like strong enough to bet here anyway. So like hands like queen eight of hearts, I would open here. King eight of hearts. maybe even some Jack 8 of hearts I could open here. So it's not like I never have any 8x. And again, like I definitely have diamonds the way that I was playing the spot in game. And also, if I had a hand like pocket nines, I would mostly check back on the turn and would definitely bet for value. So I definitely have some strong hands here that are not only 8x. So I did end up jamming and was kind of surprised by what I got called by. And
Two
it
pair.
wasn't so much that I got called, but it was the fact that I got snap called. Like there was like zero thought behind it whatsoever. The guy snapped me with ace deuce, no diamond.
Wow.
So it does say that it's a call here, like full weight call. And again, this might not be such a full weight call if Odin assumes that I'm checking back flushes on the turn, which I was. So as played here, I understand why they're calling ace deuce so much. If I never have flushes, so definitely like a lot of weird spots that were going on here. And as I said, it's kind of hard to kind of get an accurate output as to how I play the hand because Odin is doing things in this hand that I wasn't doing while I was playing this hand in game. So if there's a way that I can tweak this around and maybe kind of break this down differently and see if the outputs would have been a little different, like maybe my bluff makes a little more sense and maybe his call isn't as great as it would be if I actually do get to check turn with some flushes, we
Can I
might get a much different output here. So.
let me give a little bit of my input here, just from a, I think from a maybe less PIO perspective, more just kind of my opinion about the situation. I think that
Mhm.
like people don't check the flush enough here on the turn. They don't do it very often. So for an average opponent, he might just think you're not checking the flush almost ever if he's not a studied opponent. If he's just a random, maybe he's considering that you're not going to check the flush ever here, and that's why in his mind he's like he had that set in his mind, and he's like, if he bets, I'm calling because he's not checking the flush on this turn. Even though you should be, like you're saying, like in your range you are. But I think maybe in
Right.
like a fish's range in his mind, you're never checking the flush. So it's kind of like one of those a little bit, it's an interesting moment because I get what you're saying completely about it, and I'm sure you would be checking the flush. Like, why would you not check, especially like a king high flush or a queen high flush? It makes so much sense to
Mhm.
check back on the turn. But I think in the opponent's mind, I don't know. I think he thinks it's just such a narrow part of your range, and that you're not doing it enough that he's like heroing you. I mean, I'm not even saying it's a good hero. I mean, clearly Odin thinks it's pretty good, but it's also not considering that you're checking back flushes on the turn. But yeah, I just kind of that's kind of the perspective I see like a fish thinking about it, or like an average player maybe who's not very studied thinking about it.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. But as I said, I'm still doing this with like ace nine, jack eight. Like I still have like two pairs and pocket nines. So I have like hands that are worse than flushes. They're still doing this here on the river. So he can't just like hero off every ace high and like be good here. Like I still have 8x. I still have two pair. I still have straights. So it's not like I'm just capped to a flush to be doing this. You know what I mean? So, but like you said, he might be making that assumption, like, oh, he's only doing this with like a flush here. So, like, he's not doing it thinly enough to be doing this with like two pair or a set. When in all
Yeah.
actuality, I actually am. So that's why it's pretty important to understand like how your opponents are kind of perceiving the spot as well. Not only like how you're playing it, but how your opponents perceive it as well. So, yeah, I definitely thought that was interesting. It was kind of like I said, I thought even if he has a hand like ace deuce here, then there might be a chance that he just ends up folding it. Because as I said, this is final three tables in a six max tournament with 28K to first place. So the fact that I just got snapped in the spot
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
kind
It's kind
of
of crazy.
yeah, it was definitely kind of nuts. And as I said, the results might look a little bit different if we input some different bet sizes used on the flop, as well as maybe node locking to have some checks on the turn with flushes. So yeah, I definitely thought this was interesting. It might still be like not the greatest bluff on my part. I'm definitely not bluffing this river without a diamond here. I again yeah, it was just such a weird spot, and maybe like I should have just given up here. I really don't know. And again, this board is much better overall, I would say, for especially once turn goes check check. It's going to be a lot better for big blinds range than it is for me. But I would also assume that he's probably just going to bet like a lot of his two pair plus and flushes on the river. So when he checks, I think he's like really capped to like one pair a lot here, or like maybe at best a hand like 6-9 suited, I guess. So not only like did I think it was like a decent spot for me to go for a bluff, and I still have some strong hands, but I also thought my opponent was pretty capped to like one pair at best here because I think he's probably betting the river with a lot of like two pair plus in this spot. So
Yeah,
between
I
me
agree with
thinking
that.
his
Yeah,
range is kind of weak and also like there being some ICM pressure here and maybe he's not going to be making thin calls here. I thought it was like a decent spot to put on some pressure here, but either
yeah.
way, didn't work
Kind
out.
of mind blowing to get snapped here with like the ICM implications, how much money is on top from a random just to get
Yeah,
snapped
like I
here.
said,
Yeah,
I didn't mind so much I didn't mind so much the call. It was just the snap that really threw me off a
yeah,
little bit. So yeah. Anyway, I guess we can
yeah.
get into it
Let's
for
see real.
now. Let me check out some questions here
Yeah,
real
let me see
quick.
what real quick what that's the move's gonna say because he was asking about overbetting frequency in this spot, and I just want to see if he's talking about the river or the flop.
Okay, let
He
me
said,
catch up
"What's
here
your overbet
too.
frequency? This isn't a big overbet spot, but it's in a spot where the chips are more valuable."
We're about frequency on river, or do you mean the flop? Would have been laying down weak ace here. Like my kind of definitely betting my flush. So yeah, like if you have a weaker flush here, it makes more sense to be betting a little bit more. So if I had a hand like 8 9 of diamonds or 9 10 of diamonds, like maybe we can bet that a little more. But if we had like a king high or queen high flush, I think that those hands need a little less protection. So it makes more sense to be betting the weaker flushes, and makes more sense to be solo playing the stronger flushes.
Right.
So I can get behind that for sure.
Let's see what it said. In general,
Um,
overbets can be unbalanced.
Yeah, I mean, overbets are unbalanced. When you overbet, you're saying you have the nuts or you have like the best bluffing combos. So like your range is always going to be
It's very
narrowed when you
polarized.
overbet.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very polarized range. Like either you don't have it or you got the nuts, like you just
Right,
said.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So and then again with the ICM pressure, it makes it a little more difficult to kind of defend with the those weaker parts of your range, like those bluff catchers. And then also like in general, like how like I mean, I'd like to think I'm capable of doing it. Clearly, we're talking about a hand where I bluffed it off with 18 left. But in general, how many people are going through like a 2,000 player field, and like getting in that spot and are just gonna fire it off with 18 people left with 28 Gs to first place? Like, if they're like a strong player, I would say yeah, they're probably capable of it. But if it's just some random opponent and I'm in the big blind shoes and I see them take that line, I'm probably not giving them credit for having a bluff there. And I mean, if they do bluff me, I'm just going to tip my hat, say nice hand, like you came up with a massive bluff and a difficult spot. There's a lot of money on the line, but yeah, so definitely kind of an interesting spot there for sure.
yeah.
Um,
Good one to review. In general, some people are much more skewed to bluffs. They're trying to get value with the nuts. That's true. Yes. I mean, some people. I mean, that's a good. That's actually a decent point. I'd say. I think like people's overbets are very. I don't know. People are polarizing. I think a lot of people have it when they overbet, but that's the move is saying some people are much more
Agreed.
skewed to bluffs because they're trying to just get value with the nuts, which I think is true to an extent. But you kind of have to know your opponent because on the contrary, there's some people who only overbet when they have it. Like some
Yes,
people.
very much so.
So
That's a key point I want to drive into all of you guys. I'm happy you brought that out. When you do see overbets, like yes, they do come in game, but your average opponent is like even though you should be like 50-50, like nuts to bluffs, most people are like 75-25 nuts to bluffs or even more. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah,
in general, when you see like an average opponent and they're over bluffing, unless you have like some crazy read or you know that they're like just a wild opponent, like just assume when you see an opponent over bluffing, they probably have it.
right. Yeah, it makes sense because one of the other things I would say about that is, kind of use it like that context, kind of how you're saying, just by that most people in general have it more often as they're overbetting. But this is why notes are so important. You see someone overbet bluff, make a note of it. You see someone doing these kind of big bets constantly, these like big overbets. Okay, maybe they are going to be bluffing more often if you just see it happen like 3 or 4 times, let's say. That's why I think notes are so
Mhm.
important, and you could use that later to your advantage. So just like, yeah, like
Right.
you have like a general guideline you go with, and then you kind of go off your notes or whatever your read is. But yeah, go off the general guideline, and then you can kind of adjust from there. That's what I was
Yeah, for
saying.
sure.
So I was asking you about your breakfast. The guy's super snap too. Yeah. Yeah, I
About
guess,
my overbet
yeah, go ahead.
frequency,
Yeah, that's what he's asking about. Yeah.
I mean, I'm still gonna have like smaller bets there. Like maybe with like let's say a hand like ace nine with no diamond. Like maybe I bet like 2/3 there on the river because it like I'm gonna assume that most people aren't trapping the nuts in those spots and should just be like betting a lot, mainly because once I check on the turn, I should be like at a bit of a disadvantage, mainly because the board is better for the opponent. And like once I check turn, most of my strongest hands are not going to be there anymore. So usually you see like a lot of high frequency bet from your opponent on the river. Um, so when he checks there, I guess like I'm not giving him credit for slow playing as much as he should. And also like I know that he should just be betting a lot on the river for even for like a really small size. Like he can bet like one big blind on the river there and probably get away with it just because he has such a range advantage once I check on the turn. And then I'm just gonna like, just be calling a lot or not even being able to call with versus a one big blind bet there. So I definitely do have bet sizes that are non all in sizes. I thought having a diamond in my hand, since the highest frequency overbet jams I'm going to have are going to be flush oriented. Having a diamond in my hand made me want to bluff for the all in size a little bit more. And then if I have a combo without a diamond, I'm probably just going to bet like 2/3 on the river there. And then if he calls, like, I lose.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
so I definitely have a portion of my range that I'm betting for like the 2/3 size, and another portion of my range that I'm betting for the all in size, and that usually determines or is determined by what type of blockers you have in that spot.
right, it makes sense. And Decimove just asked, did you consider checking back the river since you had the nut no pair? I mean, I'll let you answer that, but I know that also. I'm sure if you check back the river, you can get beat by like some 7X's. I don't remember the exact board what it was, but I know there's some 7X's, 6X's, whatever. There's 5X, 6X, whatever he could have in that spot. But yeah, you can go ahead and say that. He said, do you consider checking back the river since you had the nut no pair?
Yeah, and that's something that you can look into, but on the flip side, what you have to look into is having a nut no pair is really kind of irrelevant in a spot where your king jack is essentially never ahead. So I don't think like on that run out, I don't think our opponent ever has worse than a pair in that spot. So us checking back the nut no pair, like I think there's 0% chance that we ever show down the best hand in that spot.
Right.
So that thought definitely did cross my mind, and you should also like look into that because we're mainly supposed to be giving up with our like strongest, like our highest value. Let's say our I'm trying to think of a way to say this. So like the spot where we have a little bit more quote unquote showdown value, we want to be checking those hands back a little bit more and then bluffing with the weaker portion of our bluffing range at a little bit higher frequency. So yeah, that does happen. But you also have to look into the fact that does our hand ever win at showdown? And I think the answer is no. So even though we do have the nut no pair there, I think we never win when we check. And it might be still be fine to give up in a spot like that for sure, especially since the board is so bad for us. And I would probably give up with a lot of non-diamond combos because if not, we're just betting every single bluff that we have, and I don't think that we can be doing that. So that's what just makes the spot like really interesting in general, I think. And again, like I think if I had King Jack no diamond, I would just give up. But King Jack with a diamond, I'm probably going to be high frequency bet, especially since I did say that I do still have some flushes in my range once I check, which Odin clearly does not agree with. But yeah.
Yeah, like the nut no pair. I think there was a hand we reviewed last week where it was like it was either Laurelus or somebody opened, and then he flopped like a king high flush draw and like ace 3 4, and you were saying how
Mhm.
I think it was a pure check back from Odin from what I remember in that spot, and that's a different example of like having kind of like the nut no pair spot where it's a good check back spot. The hand also hasn't developed, so it's not like in this hand that guy is a pair. You know that guy has some kind of pair in his hand. There's the
At
chance that you're
least.
ahead with King Jack is almost nothing. So it's a little bit different of a moment having, I guess, the nut no pair in this spot rather than a lot of the other moments we've talked about, maybe checking back a nut no pair. Because in this spot, the only way you're going to win this spot is literally by betting.
Right, right. And then in some of these other spots, like you can check back the nut no pair and still show down the best hand.
Right,
So
exactly, yeah.
those spots would make a little more sense to take that factor into account. So,
All right, sweet.
right. Well, that took a little more
Yeah, it
time
took
than I
30
wanted to
minutes,
on
of
that one.
course. We always go into
Yeah.
massive
But
depth.
luckily we're about halfway done this, and
Yeah,
we'll try to fly through it here a little bit.
yeah,
So yeah, we're gonna get right into it
let's
here,
do
guys.
it.
I guess we'll take any more questions real quick if you guys have any over that spot.
I think we probably evaluated good, but let's see if that's the move has any questions or slammer. Found in flooded, so he's jumping in soon.
All right, cool.
You playing today?
course, man. Series going on.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that. Nice.
The
Sweet.
Winter Series on GG, and what's the Start Series that's going on? It's like the Winter Open. I don't know. They're both winter oriented, I think. So yeah, a lot of big tournaments going on. Did you consider checking back the river? Oh, no, no. His pairs have made straights and two pair with a decent frequency by the river. No. Um,
Yes, but
yeah, they definitely do. So go ahead if you
yeah.
want to.
Well, I'll say something real quick. Yes, they do, but also he's going to be betting a lot of his straights and two pairs on the river, so you have to kind of keep that in mind that he's not just going to be checking purely on the river. It'd be actually kind of, I think, a pretty big mistake to just check your straights there on the river because you're just going to be getting so many checkbacks on that river. So I think it'd actually be a pretty big error to be doing that. So yes, he does have some of those combos, but there's also pretty significant time he's going to be betting, and there's also a significant amount of the time he's just going to have like a 6x and just a very like a shitty pair too. So go ahead,
Yeah.
Kurt. Yeah.
So okay. So where I'm one who usually is a proponent for like slow playing a lot of like straights and flushes and strong hands, just so it's harder to value bet thinly against you if you end up slow playing some stronger hands. In this particular spot, where once we check back the turn and on this run out, Big Blind just has such an equity advantage on this board that he can counter that by essentially betting super high frequency with almost all of his range that he gets to that river. Like he's gonna have some hands on the river he wants to bet like one big blind, some hands he wants to bet a third, some hands he can overbet. But the bottom line is he has such a range advantage on that river that he can just do a lot of betting on that river. So I'm assuming like I was really surprised to see him check at all, really. And that's essentially because he has such a range advantage. And whenever you have such a big range advantage on a specific board, that usually means that either you or your opponent is going to be doing a lot of betting. So essentially, whenever one player has a massive range advantage over another player, you see a lot of betting from that player in general. And that's why I might kind of want to break this down into Pio, just so I can break down those little spots just to show why, like, even if he has like bottom pair in that spot, I still think he should be betting like one big blind. Like I think he should just be betting a lot, and that's because of such a big range advantage he has there. And I do think that he probably like maybe misplayed that spot a little bit, but um, yeah, it's kind of a tricky spot and something that I'm definitely going to need to dive into. Like once we get the academy launched and we start jumping into like range advantages and identifying which opponent has the stronger range on specific runouts and how that incorporates into what type of betting strategy we want to use in each position. So like I was saying on the turn too, like I have a decent hand for betting on the turn because I have a flush draw. But the point is that on the turn we saw that our opponent has like a much bigger range advantage, or at least has more equity in the spot than he did on the flop with that specific turn card, and that's why he's able to lead. And on the flip side, because he does pick up so much equity on that turn, that's going to incorporate into a lot more checking and a lot more cautious play on my part as the pre-flop opener with the way that the board ran out. So that this can be like a really complex topic, and I promise that we will deep dive into this. It's going to take multiple videos to do that. So if this is a little too much, don't get discouraged. This is still stuff that I work with every single day, but we will get there, and hopefully I'll be able to make multiple videos breaking down these types of situations here. So
Yeah, this is very high level stuff, so don't get discouraged. If like even sometimes when Kurt's talking, like I have to really think into what he's saying and think about it. So it's definitely high level stuff. But I think we good great breakdown of that hand for sure though.
yeah. All right, and we've got. I thought we saw. Either way, we'll hop into this right now.
Yeah.
Oops, I'm gonna mute this real quick. So yeah, I think this is where we left off with the deuces to the ace
Yeah, I
three.
think he snapped ace three. I remember that.
Yeah. And again, we have five very high level players here left. So
Interesting
it should be a
call.
lot.
Real interesting. Can you go back? I just want to know this fold of threes on the cutoff here, with like the big stack. Can he just be flatting? Like, isn't this okay to like spot to flat, like five-handed cutoff, like with a big stack? And you're in position at least against European. Like, this seems like it could be a decent moment to flat threes. Like, I know in the hijack it's not a flat in this spot, but I'm just kind of curious. Hear your take here.
So yeah, in general, like I'm sure they're like deep enough where he can play this hand. But on the flip side, I guess if he's thinking if there's ever a spot where he gets like set to set in a spot versus European, that would really suck. Or if European ends up running out a straight where he has a set, and essentially whenever you have a set, you just need to call down no matter what. This basically shows the how much Papan is disincentivized to be playing pots with European being second in chips and European being chip leader. So especially with there being some other kind of shorter stacks around here too. So yeah, like from a chip EV standpoint, this probably makes sense. But from an ICM perspective, he's just really not looking to play many hands versus European. If he's going to be playing hands versus him, he wants to be playing more hands that can make like nutted type hands, like ace x suiteds and bigger pocket pairs like ace queen, king queen suited, stuff like that. That plays a lot better in a spot like that than a hand like pocket threes. So this is actually a pretty, and who knows, it may actually be a flat, but this just goes to show how important it is to kind of avoid playing pots at being second in chips versus the chip leader, because you're really disincentivized to potentially get yourself involved in like a massive pot here. And again, every hand that he folds, like this is essentially a spot where he can be making money because it forces the other smaller stacks to probably be putting in money here. So he can really just kind of chill out, really. And then
Yeah.
essentially, like once European ever folds and it folds to Papan, he can just proceed like he's chip leader. So it makes a little bit more sense why he's being a little bit tight here. Although I think he probably could call. I definitely understand why he folded.
Okay, so right next, already another interesting thing to evaluate. Pop Breed's flatted here, so three betting. I get it because the
Hmm.
ICM of the situation is, I'm sure, is why he's doing that because he's third in chips right now. Still pretty damn interesting, I'd say, because it's a hijack open
Yeah.
from a guy who's probably opening, 75% of his range right now, at least
Yeah, so I
50%.
can get behind the fold with threes a lot more than I can get behind the call with ace king suited. I could even get behind the call with like ace king off a little bit more here, but with ace king suited, I think for one, if European does call, your hand plays a little bit better post flop, which makes it a little bit more makes you want to be a little bit more incentivized to three bet. And then on the flip side, even though like it's kind of a disaster if he goes broke here, I definitely see European like four bet jamming or at least calling with worse hands than this. So I understand why he wants to play small ball here, but it's not like stacks are so short. It's not like okay, so he has 50 bigs and there's a 71 big stack, and then Timothy and Lena have like 10 bigs. You know what I mean? I could get behind that the
Hmm.
call with Ace King a little bit more there. But since stacks are a little bit deeper here, I think like the deeper the stacks get, I think there he can probably be three betting a little bit more high frequency here. But I don't hate this, but I don't love it either. I would
Yeah.
still be three betting a hand like this. So a big bet on the flop here.
So you guys can see though that people are playing with huge ICM implications right now, and they're really taking it to like the next level, like the fold with the threes, the flat with ace king suited. Like there's are spots that like normally just seem very simple, like a flat there with threes, the three bet with ace king suited. But these guys, there's so much ICM here that they're being very like extra cautious in the moment, especially Pop reaches third in chip, so he's kind of the most disincentivized guy to like lose right now. So in his mind, he's just trying to hold on,
Right,
or
right.
move his way up. I had a really interesting spot that I actually probably should ask you about when I was six left in the. We'll do it at the end. But when I was six left
Yeah,
in
I
the
was gonna say, let's try to
55.
get through
Yeah, yeah,
this.
let's get through this. No, I'll do it at the end. It's not, it's just a pre-flop spot, so it's probably. I think I could literally just look at it on the charts, honestly. But it's a very with the stacks being the way they are. I think it's you know how the charts are. Like the stacks aren't perfect, so I kind of want to just the stacks are very specific in this situation. So I'd like
Yeah,
to.
we can pull it up once we fly through this here anyway. That shouldn't take us too much time. 10-3, you can probably let this one go. I would consider this probably bottom 5 to 7% of his range here, and I understand like he can be pretty aggressive here in general, but
Do you have
like
a
Timothy's
raise?
also like a very good player here, so I don't
Right.
think that you can just like print money here, limping like the very bottom of your range here.
Do you ever raise
Even though
if you're a Papan, or do you just play this as mostly if you're full?
this,
Which
like I mean, this is so low in your range. Like I think you can just give up with this hand.
yeah, I didn't know if it stacks the way they are. Like you're just like maybe working in a raise, let's say 25% of the time here or something. I don't know.
Definitely raising higher frequency than I normally would be in like a Chippy V model because he's more incentivized, put some more pressure on Timothy, and Timothy's probably not able to defend as wide versus open, so that's going to incentivize the bigger stack to open a little bit more from the small blind. 10-3 is just like way too weak.
Right. Makes sense.
So we see a limp ISO and a call.
Call, yeah.
And Lena check back here on the flop, which is pretty interesting. I don't really understand that so much, mainly because like eights probably wants to bet pretty high frequency here on the flop because it needs a lot of
Very
protection. It's
interesting.
very much ahead. Also, the small blind, once he limp calls, he's going to have very little 3x. So I don't think there's really any reason for him to slow play a hand like eights very much. I could get behind him like slow playing a hand like aces and kings a little bit more because they're like so far ahead, need like a lot less protection than a hand like pocket eights does. Definitely an interesting check back there from him.
Yeah.
Assuming the big blind's going to call here.
Sometimes I sheesh in these high rollers that I'm like, just like, wow, like I literally don't have that in my range. Like like I think I would probably be betting like every time there with eights and like that exact moment.
Yeah.
It's
He could be
interesting.
like
He could be trapping
he could be
aces or
like
kings,
very
obviously, but like, okay, or like I don't remember what the board was exactly. I think it was like 4-4-3,
4-3-3.
four
Yeah.
three
So
three.
like I said, um he could be like maybe only checking there like let's say 10% of the time and maybe he rolled really low and checked. So but we really have no idea, how they're playing. So I'll be surprised to see a 4-bet jam here. Yeah, this hand like pretty much goes for it. Like I said, if he believes,
Wow.
wow, got him. So if he believes Timothy is capable of 3-bet bluffing there, the 4-bet jam is pretty good there. And
Yeah.
essentially, it's like I think we talked about that spot before,
The ace five suited, like ace
where
four suited, like those kind of hands when you have kings, queens, then your
yeah,
equity's
like it's a
yeah.
better jam with ace five suited than it is with like pocket eights or pocket nines in that spot, basically. Because when you get snapped, you're likely getting snapped by big pocket pairs.
Right.
So a hand like ace five is going to play better against pocket kings than a hand like pocket nines will. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like the 4.5x he's choosing to go with in the small blind. I usually go 4x in that spot, but kind of like that when you're
He's
like the
just
big
putting on more
stack.
pressure,
Yeah,
just
I
making it
like
tougher
it.
for Japan to defend. And like, even though he knows European is doing it super wide, there's just nothing that he can do about it. And
Yeah.
that's like the power of ICM, and that's why it's so important to like, put yourself in a position to have a really big stack at the final table. I mean, it doesn't always work out that way, but you can see how easy things have been for European here.
Ooh,
This is a good jam here by the Queen
yeah.
10 as well. Just
Good.
unfortunate. Wow, so we're flying right through it right now.
Wait,
Looks like this is going to be like a
can we
lot of
go
heads
back?
up.
Can we go back like real quick, two hands, just real quick to the king jack? It was just a nice barrel by pot rate. I kind of just want to show that real quick.
Yeah, yeah,
Did he
overlook
open
that.
here? I think he opened here and then double barreled. Seems like it's a pretty sweet double barrel here, I'd say.
So I don't think that he's betting this flop
Hmm.
always,
Like half pot.
especially with his non-diamond variants. I think he should be more high frequency check than bet, but this hand definitely gets in there as a bet. I think his size is good as well.
Yeah, I'd say
I think
I'd
we
say I'm
have,
like checking here probably like 70% of the time, or I don't know, some percentage like that. If I'm just throwing it out there, 75%. If I just looking at the hand, because it does hit
right.
smack Lena's range so hard on the flop.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I definitely don't hate the bet. I don't think he does it 100% of the time, but yeah. That being said, the double barrel is definitely
It's
like really
interesting.
interesting,
Yeah, that's
mainly
super
because he
interesting.
unblocks both
E-
flush draws.
Everything,
Um,
yeah.
Also, I don't see Lena ever folding an eight or even like let's say 5x of spades is clearly never folding. 8x of diamonds is never folding. He blocks some jack seven, maybe some queen jack that he might just fold to a double barrel here. So his blockers are really kind of bad here for a double barrel. So I'm actually not a big fan of this. Maybe you can get away with it like low frequency. Though, I mean, I guess one decent thing about it is he does block hands like Jack 10 of hearts and King 10 of spades. That's just like a very small part of the range. Like there's just so much like once he calls the flop, especially versus a bigger bet, which is going to narrow Lena's check calling range a little bit more, making it a little bit stronger. I really don't like this double barrel that much, but it worked, so it must have been the right play. So it works in poker. If it works, it was the right play.
Yeah, it was very interesting barrel there. I mean, I don't even know if it was a
Yeah,
good
thanks
barrel,
for
like you're saying,
pointing
but
that out. I
yeah.
actually didn't even notice that.
You frozen? Hello? be frozen here. Not sure what's going on. Yo, Kurt, you back? Kurt might be frozen. Give it a second here, guys. Yeah, Costa Rica internet is always rugged, bro. It's always constantly rugged. Yeah. And Kurt's getting a new laptop in a few days, so we're just praying like the internet will be the best as good as possible. We're gonna try to get him some kind of upgrade, but he's in a tough spot there. He's on some apartment internet, you know. Hey, Found in Flood, just mute yourself when you're not talking, please. You could just hear your background. Yeah, I mean, he should be back any moment, but who knows, you know? It could have just like a tree could have fallen on the power line, you know? There could be a monkey eating the power line. There's a lot that goes on in Costa Rica that you don't know about, you know? Like it's interesting because you know, like in the U.S., like squirrels and dogs are rivals. You know, well in Costa, squirrels and lizards are rivals. Lizards are like the squirrels of Costa Rica, so they're just on your roof all day, causing ruckuses. Like they're pretty sweet. Like you know, they're obviously pretty sweet. They're like lizards and iguanas, but they're everywhere. They're like in your house. You literally just live with them. Like sometimes you'll be looking at the corner of your wall and you'll see a fucking lizard. You know, you'll just see a like a gecko at the corner of your wall and it'll just be hanging out. It's pretty sweet. Like straight up. They're just in your house. Like you just kind of accept that bugs are in your house. There's no way you're getting all the bugs out. Like in America, Canada, I feel like most of the Western world, you're just like, oh yeah, bugs. Like they're outside. We're inside. You occasionally see one. But in Costa, you just kind of like adapt to having them in your place. Yeah, we can't hear you, bro. All right, pop your stream back on, Kurt, when you can.
All right.
Pop it
Yeah,
back
I just
on.
saw some random message here that says that uh, I was disconnected. I don't know what
Oh,
happened there.
here we
So
go. You're
sorry,
back.
guys.
You're fine. No, I was just telling stories of Costa Rica and having lizards in your house and how you just live with them. And geckos, you know, little geckos in the corner of your ceilings.
See them every day.
Just the life. I'm like, and how, like, when you live in, like, the Western world, you don't, like, you just, bugs are outside, but in Costa, you just got them kind of, like, inside a lot, you know?
Like always, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
All right.
know if what you guys heard, but either way, in the small blind, Fabrice is going to be very incentivized to limp the majority of his range here versus European. He's going to be disincentivized to be building pots versus the chip leader out of position. So we're going to see um, a lot of limping in the small blind from Fabrice.
Makes sense.
I'm going to assume we're going to see a bet here by European. He's pretty far down in his range, but he
Just
actually ends
love,
up giving up
I
here.
just love how European plays. You know, I really
Yeah.
do. I just love how he plays. He's always just such a tough guy to battle, I feel like, whenever he's around. Like sometimes he'll spew it off to you, but hey, you know, that's how it goes. He
I
plays
mean,
great.
if you're not spewing, then you're not trying
No,
hard
that's what I'm
enough.
saying. I know, I know.
Yeah, like if you're never getting caught bluffing, you're not bluffing enough.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean,
so it's kind of that
if
simple.
you're
So,
if you're watching my
um,
sessions, you'll see, you know,
I mean, it's
I go
funny. You
for it
see
a
a
little
lot.
bit.
You see a lot of recreational players. Like even if you go into the comment sections of the BCP replays where there's the biggest cash game players playing, the biggest tournament players playing, you'll be like, oh, this guy spewed so hard here. Oh, that was such a bad play, and they don't understand that like these are good plays. These are well thought out plays. Like not all of them are going to be like the best plays, but at least they have some sort of rhyme or reason to what they're doing, and people just see like, oh, you bluff there, what a terrible play. Like no, like it's poker, you're supposed to bluff sometimes. Like sometimes your opponent just has it, but then whenever they see like, oh, some guy bluffs and they don't have it, they're like, oh, what a great bluff. So that just shows like how results oriented a lot of people are, who are just like common everyday poker players, you know what I mean,
That's why there's so
and are
much
just
money
like
in poker.
so,
It's like hundred
and
percent. You
yeah,
just said it.
and who are so willing to just put down like the best players in the world and just are so sure that they're like, oh, these guys are like so bad. How are they playing at these levels? Like, there's no other sport where like some YMCA basketball player could be like, oh, Michael Jordan, he's like just like so bad. Like, it's poker's really the only game
Yeah,
like that where you have
yes,
like these
true.
everyday like 1-2 no limit grinders, like putting down like people playing 10K NL or $10,000 binds. It's really kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, it's like people get such an ego. You beat your local games, and you're just like you're beating like your $100 tournaments locally, and you're like, dude, I'm the fucking sickest. Like you're just winning all the time, and then you go and play like guys who are, truly the sickest, and you just like it flies by your like head. Like, what are they even doing? They seem like they're retarded. Like, what are they doing
Yeah.
out here? Like, I don't even get it. So yeah, and that's why there's so
And a
much
lot
money
of
in
that.
poker. Hold on real quick. There's this like just like people don't want to change. There's just like this weird like not wanting to like I don't know like people are stubborn about the way they play and they think it's right. And people are very emotional about it sometimes and like a lot of people don't want to change the way they play and adapt and like make themselves better and that's what makes poker so great is like people are just very like in their own heads and always think they're right about what they do and don't want to learn. And that's like, I don't know, for me, one of the hugest things is I'm very accepting of like, if I'm doing something wrong, I want to learn how to do it right. It's not just like, no, I'm better than everybody. I've had this success, this success, this success. No, dude, like if I'm doing something wrong, I want to learn what I'm doing wrong, fix it, and listen to the people who could be better than me or someone who has that knowledge. Like if they're having better results than me consistently, well, all right, maybe you should listen to that guy, you know?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things is they see one of these, big time players, like they make a play that they completely don't understand, and rather than ask, why did they do that or try to figure out why they did it, they just see a spot that they never or a play that they never make and just instantly want to criticize it because they just don't understand. Rather than trying to figure out why these guys are doing what they're doing, they're just like, "Oh, I've never seen this. I don't know why you would do that. Must be a stupid play." No,
Right.
it's not how it works. I mean, maybe the play wasn't right, but like rather than just instantly criticize it because it's something that you don't incorporate in your own game, maybe go out of your way to find out, why they did what they did, or is this move a good play, or am I missing something? Because people are so wrapped up in their own style and are so uh, I guess self-conscious about their own game, and that's why these people don't learn, because they don't want to look like they have more to learn or they don't want to look dumb like asking a certain question, and that's completely the wrong approach. That's why these guys have been playing for 10 years and have not improved at all because they're unwilling to either find out why people are doing what they're doing who are successful in the game, or they're unable to be critical of their own game. You know what I mean? They already think what they're doing is the holy grail of poker. So in their minds, they don't need to improve, which is why there's still so much money in poker right now because there's so many of those people out there.
Yeah, and that's
So
that's the interesting part about like that like people were always like for a long time, oh, poker's gonna get so much tougher. It's gonna be like this much tougher by 2020 and this and that. But like that psychological part of poker, I think would almost never leave because it's like almost like you're it's like your own psychology. So a lot of people might be playing and they don't have enough money to be at that table, let's say, and that it's going to affect them a lot. Or a lot of people have like issues at home going on, or a lot of people are very stressed people and they're just sitting there like angry and like looking at everybody like they hate everybody and like everyone's got their own like psychological thing going on and like people that's never going to go away, I feel like. So there will be that
no,
aspect of like amateurs that I feel like always are going to be that way and be stubborn to learning. And yeah, poker will improve in certain ways and there'll be solvers and whatever, but yeah, there's just always going to be that angle of poker. And I think that's a very underestimated part that people just kind of don't think about that much. And that is such a big part of the game, like that
there's,
psychological aspect of it.
there's still a lot of money to be made. Is
Yeah.
bottom line, guys. If you want to improve, we can definitely like turn you into winning poker players because there are people out there who are not working, who just play for fun, and the games are just so good still. So, yeah, bottom line,
Yeah, for
still a
sure.
lot of money to be made in poker. So anyway, on the button here, we got an open and defend by the small and the big blind. Checked around on the flop. And kind of an interesting bet size, I would say. Half pot
Do
size is a little interesting there.
his
Like
flat pre-flop also, are you flat in there usually? Are you three betting there? Probably,
he's
you're probably
probably
three betting some
mixing.
percentage. Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably mixing there. Definitely lose open with king four, but again, he can be opening quite a bit. Uh, Not sure about this lead here. Europeans clearly opening super wide, so I don't think. I actually think there's probably more 7x in Europeans opening range than there is in Papan's small blind defending range. So I don't really, I can't get behind this lead. Yeah, and again, I mean, from what we were talking about in the other video, I think at least I addressed that. I saw Papan doing, like, making some pretty good plays pre-flop, but I've definitely seen some very questionable things from him post-flop so far. So this guy's playing like all the biggest games too. So you can even see that, at least in my opinion, I think this guy's been making some post-flop mistakes for sure. I could be wrong about that. Again, I can't wait till Odin comes out with their three-way solver because I can't really criticize too much because I'm not as familiar with multi-way play as I am heads-up play. Yeah, European just really
Laying
hammering it
down.
on. Yeah,
In your 3x chip lead, 2.5x. Sorry, 2.5x chip lead, you could definitely lay the hammer down a lot more.
yeah, yeah. And that's a great thing about these spots. Like you can just be kind of wild, and there's really nothing that you can do here as the uh, shorter stack. Basically, that's why it's really important to, if at all possible, really try to accumulate a lot of chips going to the final table. Because yeah, you might bust like taking a pretty high risky spot with like 12 people left. But if you happen to put yourself in a spot where you're chip leader with like 10 people left, then you can just really run over the rest of the table and assure that you're at least going to have like a top three finish.
Yeah,
So,
and that's that balance between like I guess ICM and that exact thing you're talking about right there about being the chip lead and how much of an edge you have when you're like a big chip lead at the FT can't be understated. Like it's crazy how
right.
much you could just lean on the FT and how much more likely you are to get like top three, let's say in the tournament. Like something I actually used to talk about Peters a good amount is that exact thing where I would ask him about like the difference. Remember me? I've asked you about this, Kurt, a lot about like ICM versus EV. When is like that switch happen? And he would always say
Mhm.
that if you can get like a chip lead, you go for it. You should go for those spots, especially before the FT, because when you get to the FT or when you're like six left, if you do have the chip lead, your edge is just so high, you can just like push on the table so hard and people can't do anything about it. And that can't be
Right. So
understated. And you can't almost like equate that into ICM numbers. It's like a different part of the equation almost.
Right. So, essentially, like everyone knows, like Europeans being way out of line, but there's nothing they can do about it. So, like between those two factors, like if you know your opponent's being out of line and there's nothing you can do, like then you can just be out of line and just really hammer a lot of pressure on everybody because there are such high like, ICM implications here.
Yeah, that's a very simple, good way you just stated it.
You also have to be aware that there are going to be some opponents at final tables who are not going to be aware of ICM at all. And against those type of opponents, you might want to be playing a little bit more chippy V because these guys don't care about ICM so much. And you're going to see plenty of people out there like that.
Yeah.
Interesting check here on the river. I think it's actually fine, especially him not having a diamond. I guess we can go back there real quick. We saw a bet on the flop and the turn, and European check back here on the river. What do you think about this?
I mean, I don't mind this, especially specifically when the diamond comes out. Yeah, but he has no diamond blockers in his hand. It's hard to like
Mhm.
think of what hands he's going to be calling you here. Three streets that you're just going to like get value from that like you don't beat you. It's kind of hard to
It's
maybe
a good
like
one, too.
a ten. I don't even like. I'm trying to think like
King 10 with the 10 of diamonds.
yeah, or like a 10-9 maybe. Like some kind of weird 10. I don't know why he would get there with 10-9 from the flop necessarily.
Exactly. It'd
So,
be tough unless
so
he had like spades or diamonds.
10-8 maybe. I don't
Hmm.
know. Like it's really hard to think of hands. So yeah, and when it's hard to think of hands are going to call you, then it's probably good to just start checking a little bit more
Right.
often here
Or bet small
or
if he
bet
was going
small.
to bet
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Also, there are some straights that filled here on the river too.
Right.
So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If he
um,
has like a 6-7 of spades, or I guess he probably won't get there with that 6-7 of diamonds, Jack Queen of diamonds, maybe a Jack Queen of spades,
yep, yep. All those hands are definitely in the big blinds range. So,
Jack
although
seven of
I'm sure this
diamonds.
hand doesn't full weight check, it definitely gets in there at a frequency. So you can see, like yeah, like a random person might just be like, oh, I have trip aces, like I got to bet three streets. But no, this is a European being aware of the run out and what type of hands are actually going to call that are worse than his. So that's why you see some check here. Even though he has trip aces, it's very high up value wise. but you also have to be aware of what hands are going to call you too. So
Right. Or if you're in Papan's shoes, are you bluffing there? I'm
probably
probably
not with King
not.
High.
Yeah.
He probably has some showdown there. So that's actually a spot that we were talking about earlier, where I think
Can you go back real quick
um,
to the river on it?
yeah. So this is a spot where I think Europeans definitely going to have some give ups here that are going to be worse than King High here. So this is a spot like we were talking about earlier, how you have one of your higher showdown value kind of hands here, where I think it's fine to check and you can still potentially win here on the river. Also, it's kind of, I mean, he can probably bluff some missed spades here, but I would be bluffing more like, oh, let's see. I don't, versus a small bet on the flop. I don't know if he can float a hand like 6-5 of spades, but if so, I would definitely be bluffing there. Maybe a hand like Jack 4 of spades could even bluff on the river here. So things of that nature. And then again, they have to be calling versus a small bet on the flop here too, which they might be able to get in there with a backdoor flush draw versus a small bet. But all these are pretty thin here, so
Yeah. Like I feel like
it'd be
in
kind of
game,
tough.
just say it real quick. In,
But
in game, I probably bluff this more than I feel like I should be bluffing. Like looking at it right now. I mean, maybe I'm being results oriented, but it just seems like like what we're saying. Like European could still have a pretty strong checking range here on the river.
uh
So I don't know. It just might feel like I feel like I maybe bluff this too much in game because I'm just like, oh, this is just kind of what I need to win. And maybe do have a little bit of showdown value. It's definitely not out of the question. They could have like a queen high or something of that nature. So it's an interesting one because I feel like I probably should in Papan's shoes. I feel like I shouldn't be bluffing it too often, but maybe in game I actually am. You know?
So one like pretty important thing to recognize is that a player like European is clearly strong enough to have some strong hands on the river when he checks back here. And I would say most like recreationals are probably just going to be like, oh, I have trip aces, I'm going to bet here on the river. So when they actually check on the river, that means their range is going to be much weaker than it would
Right.
be as opposed to like a player like European. Like European can definitely have some strong hands in the river, which is going to make Papan a little bit more disincentivized to be bluffing on the river, as opposed to if we're playing recreational here and he ends up like we'll assume that he's going to bet like trips plus on the river. Once he checks, his range is going to be so much weaker than a player like European's range would be. So in that position, I think you could actually get away with bluffing this river a little bit more, and that's exactly why. Like a big reason it's so much tougher to play against players like European as opposed it is to play against people who are just like playing their value like really face up and checking a lot when they just have weaker hands. Like, and I say this all the time. Like against weaker players, it's really easy. You bet when they check, and you fold when they bet. Like it's kind of that easy because they play so face up. They bet when they have good hands, and they check when they have bad hands. So the easiest way you can sum that up is to check when they or to bet when they check and fold when they bet.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. That's
Yeah.
fair. That's fair.
So definitely why it's much more difficult to play against players who have more balanced ranges.
Interesting
Yeah,
rip here. So, can we talk about that for a second?
pretty good. Yeah, I think it's fine. It's kind of whatever, but really Papan is going to be pretty disincentivized to call almost anything. So this is kind of a spot where European can just rip like anything that's kind of half decent. These two are both like so short right now, and there's a $47,000 pay jump here. Is their calling ranges have to be so tight? Like European can probably just jam like so wide here. I wouldn't be surprised if he could jam like 60% of his range here
Wow.
profitably
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because of how tight Pabritz and Papan their calling ranges actually are. So. And now this obviously makes more sense because they are shorter. So, like European knows that Papan and Pabritz are essentially
Wow.
fighting for second place
He
right
just
now.
ripped 4-2
So he can
suited, right? In the
rip.
small blind there?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So, I
You can
mean,
probably rip
this,
like close to any two in that spot. Really,
yeah. I
probably
think,
should see a jam here.
I definitely think,
Yeah. So,
talk about this a
so
little
like,
more, though. Talk about this dynamic a little bit more because we saw like a Dynamo doing this deep in the 100K, I
what's
remember.
his name? What's his name?
I think I said it right. A Dynamo?
Nope. Added an extra syllable. Adamo.
Adamo. I think I'm just gonna say it wrong on
So
purpose though at this point. So anyway,
yeah, you
let's keep
should. I'm
going.
not even gonna correct you.
All right. But yeah, he
So
was doing this exact thing
so
where he was just shoving, and he was doing it probably on less of a chip advantage than European has right
right,
now.
right. So essentially here, like this wouldn't be a bad spot to trap, but the bottom line is even if like Prabrich limps and European jams here and he calls, I think A7 still only has like let's say 62% equity in a spot like this, which is not really a spot you want to put yourself in. So it's kind of better just to take the spot down here. And when there's ICM dynamics, there's a lot less incentive to be limp trapping. Not that it doesn't work, because I definitely think like limping like aces through tens here would definitely be good. But then those like mediocre kind of hands that you can limp call off pretty easily, you mainly want to play those more as jams, because you don't want to be all in here with a hand like a7. Like I said, even a hand like 9-3 off, I think a7 probably only has like 60 to 65% equity in a spot like that. So that's not very much in a spot like this where there's a $47,000 pay jump. So with these like more marginal hands that you're willing to like limp trap, I think you just want to like play those more as jams, and then like basically be trapping the absolute top part of your range, like tens plus essentially.
Yeah, makes sense. And just keep as we're going here, just talk about like European how he's gonna be just jamming so freaking much and like it doesn't have to be any particular moment. Like we'll just keep going. But
And
I'm sure he's
so
gonna.
this is
This he didn't jam here.
well,
I
I was
get.
just
I
gonna
get.
say something about this hand.
What was that?
Okay. So about this hand, essentially European, he's going to be jamming the majority of his range, but he also wants to have an opening range with essentially, because he doesn't want to just be jamming like aces here, obviously. So he's going to be opening with like his strongest hands, like his pocket nines, ace queen suited plus, stuff like that. And then essentially like these hands that are like really marginal as jams and like really weak, like essentially the bottom of his range, because he wants to be V pipping here 100% of hands. So what he's gonna do with his absolute strongest hands is raise first in, and what he's gonna do with the app like his 7 deuce offs, his 8-3 offs, stuff like that. He's just gonna raise those and essentially not put himself in a spot where he's like jamming the absolute bottom of his range for 25 big blinds here. So again, he is going to be jamming the majority of his range here, and he's gonna have a very small opening range here with the very top and very bottom of his range.
I think I'm not. I think I haven't been aggressive enough in these spots. Honestly, I haven't been V pipping 100% in these spots, so I'm probably just folding a little too much. Honestly, when I'm like,
I mean,
I mean,
he
I'm
just has a massive lead here,
yeah.
so he can essentially do whatever he wants. I mean, if we actually
What
got to see,
what if his chip lead's like 2x? I guess like then he's not going to be doing it like that, right?
it depends how deep they are. If it's like 2x to like 50 to 100 big blinds, then maybe not so much. But if it's 2x like 20 bigs to 40 bigs, then that would even be kind of close too. Because if he rips and he loses, then he's like, the roles essentially flip here. Here he's got a 6x chip lead, so he can do whatever he wants basically. Adana Momo. Nice. That's gonna be that's what we'll call it from now on. Adana Momo.
Oh my god, that's too funny.
Yeah.
Oh my god. All right. So wait, he flatted here in the small blind? Oh no, big blind. He flatted the big blind.
Big blind.
Okay.
Yeah. Saw bet from the button, which is probably fine. He's definitely has to defend here versus check raise as well. I think European could probably check or bet there on the turn.
European.
Again, when you do
I
have the
love
chip lead, you're
European.
just more incentivized to be like betting a little bit more.
This is like how
Uh,
I feel like his style is always just like what like I try to go for in my style. Like playing like I'm not saying I play like him as good as him or anything, but I'm saying like I that's like what I emulate in my head to play like, you know what I mean? Like an
well, it's just
aggressive
about
kind of boss
recognizing the
style.
position.
What was
Well,
that?
it's him recognizing the spot that he's in right now,
Yeah,
basically. I mean,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
not
yeah.
just always
For
playing
sure,
this
for sure.
style.
Of course, of course, of course.
So,
Of course.
it's also like what makes him a great player is his ability to recognize table dynamics as well as his position, depending on what his chip stack is. So that's what makes the stronger players, as strong as they are.
Right. For sure.
If you got some guy playing this kind of style when he only has 20 big blinds and everybody else has 50 plus, then that guy's probably spewing
I
pretty
feel like I've
hard.
actually done
So
very well against European Lifetime, but I love how he plays. And he just crushes
yeah,
it so hard. I feel like I've watched a lot of his stuff deep.
yeah. Probably just gonna check here. Yeah. So you're gonna see him just open here. Yeah, so he's gonna do this again with the top and the bottom parts of his range. We're gonna view fold here. Yep. And again, these guys are like really disincentivized. Like the shorter they get, the tighter they have to be because they're clearly both playing
Yeah.
for second place here. So you're gonna see some really tight folds and really tight defends. And big blind incoming.
It's gonna be
Yeah,
this
definitely
hand's
have
gonna be
to
funny
defend.
after he barrels him off it.
Yeah, he's probably gonna double barrel here on
Yeah,
the turn.
almost for sure. It's fucking European,
Yeah,
dude.
and it's just so hard. He's
Yeah.
just like, yeah, my hand could be good, but wow,
Wow.
he did
He's about
suck
to.
it up here.
Yeah, he's gonna. Oh, he checked back. I guess he's just
Yeah,
like
it's
when he
probably not
calls the
bad.
turn. Yeah.
But I mean, once he does call a turn here too, he's also if this is like the king of clubs, he probably like fires away too, blocking the flush. But he knows like Breeds probably has to have at least like a seven when he calls a turn for pairs, or at least a five, which actually like 5x might get check raised on the flop here too. So essentially, like once he calls a turn, he's gonna have like king high, um, some club draws, some 7x, some 5x. So I'm okay with the double barrel, and I definitely don't mind the give up here because Fabriz's range is going to be pretty narrow once he calls the double barrel here. So don't hate the give up by any means. And you see, he actually snapped, gave up too. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna lose open here, I would say, with king seven. Dry board here. Normally, I think we probably see a pretty high frequency C bet, but C bet frequencies definitely go down with ICM dynamics, especially when you're when the big blind is the massive chip leader. You're definitely disincentivized to be C betting super high frequency. You're gonna see a fold here. You're gonna see a fold. Wow, he did call, but you see how he tank called too.
Yeah.
So
That's a tough
like
spot.
that
I
just
mean, that's
seems
a
like
real. 'Cause I know ICM, I'm sure tells you to fold that. I would imagine, but fucking nines
it's
when
probably
Europeans shoving fucking literally anything.
yeah, it's probably super close. I'm not willing to say that it's a losing call by any means. It might actually be printing, but the fact that he has like 2x what the short stack has here makes this. Now that I say that, this
Oh
might
yeah,
actually be a
yeah.
fold.
I actually
You
didn't
might
see the stacks. I
actually,
thought he had like 900K for some reason. I didn't actually see that he had 1.4 or 1.5 mil.
yeah.
Wow.
So I might actually run this in ICMizer later and post it in the
Yeah, this is
Discord
really
just to
interesting.
see if this is actually a call or not with these ICM dynamics here.
Yeah.
So this might look like a snap call, but I would not be shocked at all to see that this is like losing quite a bit.
Showers.
Yep. And Papan
And
says, "Thank you
it's
very much." Yeah, it throws out the little heart. I mean, he's got to be ecstatic after seeing that. Rip City. Hold up. Oh, he limped. Okay. Slammer says, if I'm playing online, I see the stack size exactly. I'm laying down those nines. Yeah,
that's
it
fair.
would actually be, yeah, a very thoughtful laydown. I mean, that shows that you understand ICM dynamics and just how much of a disaster it would be if you call and lose in a spot like that. Like that's a $47,000 pay jump there.
I guess
Pans
not
says, thank you
tall.
very much.
Oh.
I don't mind the fold there.
Yeah, I didn't see how it played out honestly. I was looked at the chat.
So he limped
Limped, okay.
back. He C bets flop. Wow, he doesn't C bet flop. Okay. This goes check back call. Nope, he calls versus a bet. And this is actually like a really bad river. I definitely think he can have like some 8-9, some queen nine, some 10x, maybe some
Yeah.
hearts here. Can do this.
Seven
So the
nine
eight's not
maybe.
really that great. Yeah, for sure. And then not blocking hearts either. I definitely okay with the fold there. Good bluff by Papan.
Did European limp here? You did, right?
I think so. Yeah. Snapple.
I need to see some heads up. This is what I need to see, you know? I mean, it's not going to be that interesting, but it is interesting to see how much European's limping.
Uh,
Can you explain, like, why he's, like, limping this hand, for instance?
well,
He's
you
just
want
limping everything then?
no, 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 not at all. This is definitely a hand like strong enough to trap. Papan's definitely like gonna be jamming some weaker hands here, and then at the same time, he doesn't want to jam a hand for like 10 big blinds with a hand like 10-5 offsuit. So obviously, like there's no ICM at play here when he's so short. So he's gonna be calling off, in a chippy V kind of format here. So. Uh, he's definitely not just going to be ripping like any two cards here. He doesn't want to just like double up Papan and with an absolute trash hand because Papan's not folding like super tight anymore. Like he's calling appropriately now. So you definitely want to have there's more of a chip EV kind of dynamic going on right now for sure. So and this hand's just like good enough to trap here pre-flop. So question is, does he rip or does he call? And Papan probably should be checking here with a pair. And then if European jams, he's probably going to call. I was just going to say I wouldn't be surprised to see him check back. He does have some showdown with his ace high here. Obviously, it would be nice to disguise some flushes, which he's clearly done here. And this hand has a decent amount of equity going to the river here too. So yeah, I don't hate the check here by any means. I actually would probably check myself and then bet some other draws that have less showdown than a hand like ace high here. And clearly a setup on the river. And
Wow.
yeah, pretty fun final table. Definitely going to check out that pocket nines hand. I'll share that with the Discord here at some point as well. So yeah, that's gonna wrap up the 10K. So
Yeah,
yeah, guess we'll go to the chat and see
you guys got
what
any
everyone's got to
questions,
say.
thoughts? Yeah, but with the real, while anyone writes what they want to write.
I'll hop
Yeah,
over
with the
here.
nines hand, post that in the hand discussion chat. Let's throw that up there. Is that cool, Gert? Just throw that up there
Oh,
when you want to do it.
and
Hand discussion, yeah.
well, I mean, I'll run that later for
Yeah,
everyone.
not at this moment. That's the exact moment. Yeah. Throw that up there
Right, right.
later
So
for
I'll keep
sure.
that up and run that for
Yeah,
everyone later.
but that's some great play in that. I mean, it's very even me even like watching that like again like I was saying like literally heads up. I feel like I haven't been playing necessarily as good as I can be, and I
Mhm.
think I've been ripping too much in like a format of like with 10 bigs. I feel like I've been ripping too many hands like a 10-5 suited when I'm in that big chip position edge. When I should be either like limping or maybe a small raise and not I guess taking advantage of that situation enough. I guess I've been playing it like, you know what I mean? Like in that kind of manner a little
A
too
little
often.
too aggro,
Yeah.
not limping strong enough, probably jamming a little too weak.
Yes, exactly that.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. Yeah, so well, just check out the charts. I mean, the charts have heads up charts as well. You can also like there's all these replays and BCP replays, so you can see some of the best players how they're playing heads up at shorter stacks, at deeper stacks. So you can just kind of get an idea of how the some of the top guys are playing.
Yeah, great stuff to see. Definitely really good stuff to see. Always really good to watch the best players play and just see their cards. It's like something you didn't have like in 2010, or like it probably started like 2015, I feel like, or something. And it's just such a good asset. Like before, I would watch them without seeing their cards, and now you could just literally see their cards in like these giant tournaments. It's sick.
Yeah, I don't know where this I don't know when this site started becoming a thing, but we should definitely be taking advantage of it for sure.
Yeah.
It's a lot of value in being able to see some of the better players end up playing here. So, all right,
Yes.
Slammer. The last hand with Papa I would have probably been all in on the turn with a small pair and the flush draw. I definitely played too fast. So
I don't
that's a good
hate
point
that.
that you brought up there. And I did say I would probably be checking in Papan's spot as well. And essentially, what you see in those spots where you have flush draws when you have a pair and a flush draw, you're a little bit more incentivized to be checking because you do have a little bit of showdown. And even if European bets on the turn, you still have enough equity to call it off because he's going to be jamming like draws that you're ahead of with a pair basically. So essentially in that spot, if European jams on the turn and he calls, like he's ahead going to the river with his pair of twos there. You know what I mean? So you're a little bit more incentivized to slow play when you have the a pair and a flush draw in a spot like that, and then fast play when you have a flush draw that has a little less showdown value. So yeah, good question there, Slammer.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I'd probably be playing it the way you would have played it, Slammer. So I could be overplaying those spots a little bit too. I definitely know what you're saying, but those kind of hands do have good showdown value. You don't always have to play them super fast all the time, you know?
Yeah, plus you can again you can easily you have enough equity to check call off. You know what I mean? So you're essentially allowing your opponent to put in more money with a worse hand, or just showing
Right.
down potentially with a hand that has some showdown. And then you also, if you're betting every single flush draw on the turn, when you get to the river and you make a flush and a flush completes. If you're betting every single flush draw you have on the turn and the flush completes on the river, you essentially never have a flush there. So that's a way of making sure that when you do check back, you do still have flush draws in your range.
Right. Makes sense. Makes sense. Well,
Going to get you again your gut instinct to play weaker hands stronger than the stronger hands play. Yeah, and you know those are still things that I work on as well. That's why the solvers are good to really have there, just to see the kind of strategies they take. Not that jamming on the turn there is would ever be considered a losing play. Like it's definitely not losing. It's just not the most optimal play in that position, I would say.
yeah, Slammer, you could kind of think about it this way, where it's like, yeah, if you jam the 4-2 suitor there, it wouldn't be like a bad play. It's definitely not bad by any means. It'd be a winning play still, but there might be better ways to play certain hands. So we're trying to like figure out the optimal way to play hands. Like, you know, a
Correct.
lot of pots you even hear us talk about, we're like, oh, we're doing this 75% of the time, doing this 25%, or maybe 50-50. We're mixing it up. So spots aren't just like, super linear all the time. There's just like a lot of factors that go into them, and ranges
Mhm.
could vary, and there could still be another move that's a good move. But what if there's an optimal play? So you want to look for the obviously the optimal play as much as possible. Even though, like, yeah, if you shove there, that's perfectly fine. That's not going to be a mistake or anything, but there could be a better play still.
Right. And it might even mix in that spot too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And again, like don't get thrown off when we talk about mixing like 75-25. Like we never know the exact frequencies that are being used by the solvers, but as long as we like tell ourselves like, okay, like I'm gonna do this half the time and I'm gonna do that half the time. So at least as long as we're giving ourselves certain frequencies and that it's a spot we know we're not doing one play over the other 100% of the time, that at least gives you some sort of a blueprint to kind of use while you're in game. And you'll get better at that the more and more you start using solvers and watching a lot of these plays that have different frequencies that are being used instead of like pure bet frequencies, basically.
Yeah. Yep, definitely. Well, good stuff, guys. Appreciate all y'all. Let's see what Slammer has to say. Yeah, be unpredictable. I mean, in a very loose worded sense, yes, be
Okay, so I'm
unpredictable.
actually
Yeah.
really happy that you use the word unpredictable. So I'll use an example here. So like essentially American players, I think, are some of the most face-up players I've
They
ever
really
seen. Like if
are.
I'm going to
Yeah.
Vegas, like and that's where that strategy that I say, bet when they check and fold when they bet, like that play could never be used more so than when I'm like in a live $600 tournament in Vegas, basically against a bunch of Americans, because they're all so face up with their play. Like they bet when they have good hands and they check when they have weak hands. So they're very predictable and you can adjust your strategy. Be like, oh, I would usually give up with this hand, but this guy's checking in a spot where I know he's always weak. So when I would normally give up here, maybe I'm bluffing a little bit more in this spot. So on the flip side, where I say about Brazilians in general, and I'm really generalizing the entire country when I say this, but it's obviously not true for everybody. But Brazilians are very unpredictable. Even though I think like a lot of them may not be the strongest players, many of them are very unpredictable. And even if they're not the strongest type of players, they're always doing things where I'm just like, whoa, I can't believe they did that. I would have never expected that. And by using that type of strategy, it's always going to be more difficult to play against a player like that, as opposed to somebody who's just being very predictable with their play. They bet when they're strong, they check when they're weak. It's always going to be so much easier to play like players like that. So I would much rather play against a bad American player than I would ever want to play against a bad Brazilian player.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You being unpredictable is a very good thing in poker, and just trying to make it so your opponents can't put you on hands. It's also, especially at like a live table, it creates this aura around you where like, oh man, I don't want to fuck with this person. Like this is an annoying person to be in pots against, and it's a good aura to have. And yeah, it's just a general how you want to be in online poker too. So it's just a general, you
Yeah,
want
and
you.
then
Go
real
ahead.
quick, it makes it so against weaker players, I'm always value betting like very thinly because I essentially think that they're incapable of trapping with really strong hands in spots where I think like most recreationals or most like mediocre players are just always going to bet when they have a strong hand. So if I know that they're not trapping enough, I'm betting thinner for value because I know they're not trapping with those strong hands, and I know that I'm not going to be facing a check raise as much as I would be against like a player like European who's capable of not only check raising with a strong hand, but check raise bluffing me with a weak hand. So in that against a player like him, I would be much less incentivized to be betting for thin value versus somebody who I know is never trapping, is never check raise bluffing enough, and in that regard, I can value bet a lot more thinly against players like that.
That's a really good way you just said it about why not to bet too thin against good players. I like that explanation.
Right, right,
Makes a lot of sense.
right. So, yeah. Any other questions?
I posted a hand discussion last night from another BCP I was watching. If you guys want to glance
Can
in
we
that
check that out?
briefly.
Oh, yeah. I think I looked at this right before I went to bed. So, you essentially saw the a fold from OPR the Turk, right?
Yeah, it was like
Wow.
my I was watching this and my first gut reaction is like, did he time out? But no, I think he intentionally folds here. I think it has a lot to do with the stack size of the three better and the pay jumps. But I was curious on your guys' take here. I don't know. This seems super nitty to me.
So, okay. So a few things. One, we have to assume that, like, I don't know who Eduardo is. Maybe he's a high stakes guy. He doesn't look familiar to me, but let's assume like he's a strong, like, capable opponent who's going to have bluffs here. Like, for example, we saw, oh, who was the guy, the beer pong guy that we were talking about that was throwing the three bet bluffs in? What's his name? Canadian dude, Timothy. We saw him make some pretty kind of not crazy, but he made some three bet bluffs off a stack size similar to this one. And we know that a player like him is capable of having three bet bluffs in a spot like this. Whereas if this Eduardo guy is just some unknown, if he's like some satellite guy, and you see him make this three bet, and I have queens, I could definitely get behind the fold here. But if I assume that Eduardo is like a top MTT player and is capable of having bluffs here, I'm essentially never going to be folding pocket queens here for two reasons. One, Eduardo's three bet bluff range is mostly going to be ace X and king X driven, like ace five suited, king 10 suited, things of that nature. So we unblock his range with pocket queens, his bluffing range with pocket queens. So for that reason, I would like to be jamming here. And also, he's also going to have hands like ace king, which you're actually flipping against here. So you're technically ahead of a hand like this. So I think queens in general is probably just too strong to be folding here. If he had jacks, I could probably get behind the fold here. But if we do think Eduardo is capable of having a three bet bluff range here, and the fact that we unblock his bluffing range with the suited ace X and the suited king X's, I think this hand just needs to go in no matter what. So, but then again, like I said, if Eduardo is just a random satellite winner and OPR the Turk knows this, I would absolutely be okay with him folding the pocket queens here. So it's definitely opponent driven, whether or not I want to be folding or jamming here.
For me, I probably don't think I have a fold in me here in this spot, but I definitely get Kurt's perspective, especially against like a random. If you think there's like just no chance this guy could have anything like worse, but I do think there's still some pocket jacks in his range. I think there could be a chance he just does this instead of shoving pocket jacks occasionally, just because randoms will do this. And I think if they get shoved on back, they'll fold or something to like the four bet shove from the first guy. So I do think there's like a chance he could have pocket jacks. So that kind of, but like also, yeah, if he's not capable at all, it does sway a lot harder to aces, kings, and then probably the occasional ace king. But he could be ripping the ace king and jacks. It's kind of it's a tough spot. It's a very tough spot. I don't think I could be folding here. I think I would start folding here with jacks like most of the time, unless like Kurt's saying, Aguardo is a very strong player, or yeah, like a very capable player. But against most people, and like especially in this moment, most guys aren't going to be too light here. So it's kind of
Right.
like it's a tough moment for sure. It's a very tough spot. Like, I probably don't think I can get away with queens on this stack, but I definitely get how he might have done it. But like also like every stack is way bigger other than these two guys, so it's just kind of an interesting
That's the
moment.
point I was going to bring up too, actually, that
Yeah, I don't
OPR the
like
Turk
that.
is like the short stack right now. So
Yeah, I don't
there's
like
definitely
that.
way less ICM
I just know he's
involved with
literally a
his.
short stack. Yeah, I just thought he was like
Right.
third last, but he's like literally short stack too.
No, he's the shortest.
Yeah,
So
so it's a go. I think it's a
I think
go.
he was the second, like the Ace King you're talking about. I think he
uh,
was the second stack before he three bet.
No, the queens. We're talking about the queens
Oh
now.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's the nut short stack here.
yeah. That's
And
why.
yeah,
like, how much
yeah.
do you guys think position goes into this, right? Because he opens Ace Queen from first position, right, and then under the gun plus one three bet. So he's probably thinking the ranges are pretty strong here, and like if I'm three betting here, just trying, if I'm three betting light here, I don't know. I think he's more incentivized to jam and hope to get through than three bet. Like this looks pretty strong to me, the way this plays out and the positions. I can understand his call, but I don't think I can find a fold here like at all. I'm not good enough for this, probably.
I
Not
mean,
in
this
this
is high
spot.
level stuff, so definitely like there's very few tables like playing like this that aren't like the super high stakes with like the biggest ballers.
Yeah,
So
for
this is
sure.
certainly not like something you would normally see. Um, Obviously, like these are the two earliest positions at the table, so they're obviously going to be the tightest positions, of course. So ranges are going to be super tight here. That being said, like if we saw this three bet size, and if like what if God had like 25 to 30 bigs, his range would be much tighter opening from EP as it would be if he's opening here with like 110 bigs. You know what I mean? So his range, even though he's under the gun, is going to be a lot more loose with so many chips than it would be if he had like 20 to 30 bigs here. So Eduardo could actually three bet bluff a little bit wider versus an EP opening range that's going to be a little bit wider in the spot with 100 big blinds than there might be if he was opening between 20 and 30 big blinds. So I might actually see Eduardo three bet bluffing a little bit more in a spot like this. As opposed to if what if God had 20 to 30 bigs, which would make my fold with pocket queens even worse, basically because
Yeah,
I do think Eduardo should be three bet bluffing a little bit wider versus What If God, whose range can be a little bit wider from EP.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think I have anything really too much more to add on top of that. Yeah, I think I would be going with it. It's a very
Super
close
strange
spot.
spot.
It's a strange spot for
Yeah.
sure. You don't see this very often where it's like a UTG open, then a 19 big stack, three bets, one spot
Yeah, yeah,
over. It's
yeah.
pretty
But
unusual.
but but these guys definitely have bluffs in this spot, and they also want to have like aces and kings.
Yeah.
And with a hand like ace king, you probably just mostly want to be ripping, but I would mostly rip with the offsuit variety. And if you want to three bet the suited variety, it makes a little bit more sense because when you do get called, that hand plays a little bit better post flop. So I don't hate it. Although I would probably at 20 bigs, I would probably just be ripping myself. So yeah, but I don't hate the three bet. If he had ace king off, I would definitely be ripping though. So.
I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with every word you just said. It seems like Ace King is the start of the range where he's like, this is strong enough to just three bet here. Like,
Right.
yeah. I agree completely.
Yeah, yeah, that was a good, definitely an interesting spot. I'm glad you brought that one up, actually.
All right,
Yeah, I
fellas.
was just doing my own review session last night and I came across that and I was like, I really thought he timed out at first, but I rewatched it and it made a little more sense.
Yeah, yeah. I don't hate his fold, but I probably wouldn't be making the fold based on the dynamics that we see. And again, we don't know. I mean, maybe Eduardo is a high stakes reg. I'm not sure if he's that or if he was a Sadie winner. So that would definitely, I think, is the biggest component to whether or not you end up folding or jamming with the pocket queens.
So let's say we're chippy V with like 30 big blinds deep. That's almost always a jam, right?
Yeah, there's not three bet bluffing ranges in position for 20 bigs. You're just jam or call in a spot like that.
All right, cool.
So basically, when you're at a final table, there's less incentive for you to just rip in all your chips, obviously, because you want to be playing for stacks far less frequently because obviously every pay jump you make is a lot more money in your pocket. So that's why you see 3-bet bluffing ranges being used in spots where they are not being used in a chip EV format, basically.
Appreciate the explanation. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, no problem. Have you brought it up, man?
All right, everyone. If you think that's all for today, we did a good hour, a little over an hour and a half, hour 35 here. So appreciate everyone for tuning in. I think that was a really good
Let's pray we
session.
got Steve's voice. Let's pray we got Steve's voice so it doesn't
Yeah.
sound like I'm talking to myself.
No, we're good on that. I'm 95% sure. You
All
never
right,
know.
nice.
Technical difficulties
Nice.
having a thing.
Yeah, we have seen 2-outers before.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Just yeah, real quick, I guess. If you guys have any quick questions, real quick, we'll take them before we peace out of here.
No,
Thanks a
I gotta
lot.
hop out for another meeting. Have a good one, guys. Take care.
All right,
later,
thanks, Kenny. Appreciate it, bud.
What were we saying?
Thanks, you guys.
All right, anytime, Slam. Happy you joined, man.
All right, thank you, Erica. Have a good day. I'll be
All right,
streaming
guys.
later. I'll see you then.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye.
All right, that's the move. Peace out, guys.
Peace out.
All right, later, Steve.
Later, guys. Later, that's the move. Thank you, Found and Flood.